What is going on, people? My name is Sufyan Harbi and I'm coming back at you live again with another political video, but this time it's the state reps that the candidates are for this forum. And a quick note, this whole forum is in video, so you're welcome. It should be a lot better than it was last time, like yesterday's forum. But yeah, just enjoy the forum. It's Dave Baker and Anita Flowe. Probably my favorite forum out of all three of them. Just the whole atmosphere, both of them, their whole, just everything about them was just so good. My favorite forum. That's about it. Do not forget to vote. Enjoy the video. Don't forget to subscribe. Hit the like button. Comment whatever you felt about the video. I love to hear. I love feedback. And merch coming from.
Just kind of give like a brief background about yourself.
Great. My name is Dave Baker. I am a resident of the Wilmer area, Candioi County, here for about the last 26 years. My family moved here in about 1994, and I came to town to run the Torgerson Properties, the Wilmer Conference Center, what used to be the Holiday Inn, the Best Western. Now it's the Best Western. So I'm in a hospitality business my whole life. And I came down here to work that business, and then a couple years after that, about 6 years later, I was actually able to pull enough funds together, cash in my 401ks, my savings, and I bought the little hotel in Spicer called the Northern Inn Hotel. And I did that about 1999. That was my dream. I always wanted to have my own business. Did that. A couple years after that, I bought the Colonial Inn, which is right across the street, which is now the Concord Bank, because they tore it down. It used to be Wilmer's best kept secret. That's what they had always on the reader board. It never changed for like 20 years. So it was an old motel, and I owned that for a few years, and I wanted to sell it because these guys were looking for a place to have a bank, so we sold it to them. And then at the same time, I bought the Super 8. So on the south end of town, I own the Wilmer Super 8. In between times, I bought and sold a couple businesses, so I sold the Northern Inn. So now I'm a small business guy. I have the Oaks at Eagle Creek, Super 8 Hotel, and I have the Green Lake Cruises on Green Lake. Used to own Melvin's on the Lake. So I understand issues when it comes to business and treating employees with respect and with honesty and with integrity. And if you know anybody that's ever worked for me, I hope that they will tell you I'm a pretty good guy to work for. I'm not perfect, but I'm a pretty good guy because I really respect my employees more than anything, because I can't have a business without them. So that's my name, Dave Baker, and I am just thrilled to be here with you guys tonight. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Pardon me if I have to clear my throat a bit. I have a bit of a cold right now. Occupational hazard. I'll start with my family background. Married to Dr. Ken Flowe, and there's the occupational hazard. He brings home every germ there ever was. So I'm dealing with that thing. And that's how I came to live in this area, is he found his dream job up here and I followed along. And in order to lure me up here, they told me all about the great music and art opportunities, which turned out to be true. But once I got up here, I found out that it was more than that. Everybody is such a caring community. There's such a high rate of volunteerism up here. I got involved playing my music around town, drum set and bass guitar, and volunteering with hospice with my dog, Coda. So that's a good way to get to know people. Family background further, I have 2 grown children. My daughter made me proud. She decided to be a mechanical engineer like Mom. I didn't suggest it. She had to discover that on her own. And my son has also taken a mechanical bent. He is working in the construction industry as a heavy equipment operator. And interesting thing about him working in heavy equipment operation is that he is Korean. And there's a lot of Latino people who work in construction, so people view him in that category, and he has experienced quite a change in behavior recently due to current events. He has learned every single negative thing that is being said to Latinos, like go back to where you came from, and he's had things thrown at him and the like. So one of my priorities is, just setting an example in leadership to try to reduce this type of thing happening. So, and I think my time is up. Okay. And the next question, Miles, that's yours.
Yeah, very general, but in 2 minutes, summarize the main reasons why you're running.
You want us to take turns, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's go with you.
Sounds good.
Well, let's get back to the engineering thing. I think an engineer has a lot to offer. I think we could use some diversity in who we have working on issues down there in St. Paul. My engineering background that I think that I can use to illustrate this concept is one of my first jobs in industry was at a plastics manufacturing plant. I replaced two guys, an engineer and a draftsman. They left before I got there. My new boss showed me around a little bit, and then he left town also. So I knew a little bit about it, but I needed to learn more. So I went around to the different departments. So I had to do design of the product, design of the molding, manufacturing, quality control, everything. So I would go to the different departments, and I literally said, "And what do you expect engineering to do for you?" And they would tell me. And I would go do it. And then they came back with feedback, and they said, "You know what, we like you better than the previous engineers. Those guys would come in here and they'd just assume they knew everything and start making changes without understanding what was going on." They said, "We like your style." And I can relate that to what I'm doing now. When I go around door knocking and meeting with people, I say, "What do you need done in St. Paul? What are your needs?" And I've been hearing those, and that's what I plan to do. Take the needs down for me to St. Paul, study the issues, talk to some experts, take into account what their biases are. I mean, there's special interest groups, there's interesting things that they can tell you, but I will keep track of the bias and go for unbiased opinions whenever I can to make decisions. And I think a scientist will be useful in understanding some of the complex issues that come up. There's a scientific aspect to a lot of things, statistics and chemical applications and farming. At any rate, I'll find it fun to learn more about those things. Thank you.
Do you have any questions that you want to be answered?
Okay. Why am I running for office again? So I've had the honor to serve as the representative here in most of Canada County for the last 4 years, 2 terms. And what a thing I have experienced was I feel like I'm in a and again, I can't relate to this because she's way smarter than I am because she's got PhDs and she's like super smart. But I am like feeling like I'm on a college degree on steroids when you're in the representative as you sit in St. Paul. You learn about so many issues and so quickly. I feel like the committees that I've served on, healthcare, transportation, the Ways and Means, which is kind of the big finance committee that approves all finance bills in the House, and you have to be kind of a chairman to be on that committee. I've been on energy and jobs because I'm an employer, as you know. But I've learned so much, and the reason I want to run again is because I think I actually make a difference. I think I make a difference with my colleagues, Democrats, Republicans, because we respect each other. I had Representative Liz Olson called me the other day. She's from Duluth. She's a Democrat. "Dave, I just want you to know that I think about you when opioids come up because I've worked so hard on opioids. I can't wait to work with you again, Dave. And I just hope that we can work together. And I loved your bill last year, and I want to tweak it. I'm going to make some changes to it." But I have colleagues that call me like that. And that's just really encouraging to me because it takes a majority of 134 members to pass a bill. Not a majority of my party or a majority of the Democrat Party. It takes a majority of the 134. I think I make a difference down there. I think people hear me. And I think I can articulate my point well because I know how to communicate with people through my job, with my businesses and my life here. And so I can't wait to get back to work in St. Paul.
Perfect. Thank you. Next question is for you to begin with,
Sure.
Dave. And it is, what do you hope to accomplish?
That's a big one because there's a lot of things. And I know that being in St. Paul for a few years, like I mentioned, I can't solve things as fast as I want to. What I've learned about working in government is things take time, but actually the founding fathers of our great state made it that way. We've got 2 bodies, the House and the Senate, and they are separate bodies because if one bill doesn't pass one House, it doesn't go anywhere. So you've got Senator Lang here in Candioi County that represents basically my seatmate in the Senate. So if I bring an idea to St. Paul, I can't make it work in the Senate. It doesn't matter what I do, because if I can't get it out of the House, or if I can get out of the House, but the Senate doesn't like the idea, it doesn't do me a lot of good. However, what I've learned in the last couple of years is that if you have an idea, you better make sure you get your senator on board to make sure they understand your idea. If you get the idea, you've got to get it through the committees, and you've got a long process because you have committee hearings, and this is where we really kind of tear apart bills. So if I have an idea about bringing money to Highway 23, which we did pass last year to get the gaps funded, it took a lot of work to make sure that the other members knew how important Highway 23 was and the dangerous roadway that we have that you guys probably drive. And so I had to make sure they understood it. I showed them pictures. I showed them the bills that we did in the past. And so we had to work together on that. But what I've learned about, again, and the reason I want to go back is there's many issues like healthcare, transportation still has a lot more to do. I want to do things with education and funding our schools better when it comes to social work and mental health is really a big deal to me. And I think I want to keep running and keep doing this because I actually think I'm effective. The moment I think I'm not effective any longer, I want to come home and go to my business because I love my job at my business. I love my wife more than anything and my kids and my family. I am ready to be home anytime, but I'll do that when I think I'm done making a difference in St. Paul.
Thank you.
Well, I'm hearing a lot about different issues around town that affect our ability to attract and retain skilled workers or unskilled workers, any type of workers. We have a shortage of housing, we have a shortage of daycare, and of course we have the big issues with sufficient medical insurance, getting enough people covered. And all these things work together to make our economy grow. So these things need to be addressed. We've addressed some things recently with having Highway 23 getting more funding, but that's not the end of the transportation issue. I am an engineer. I am fixated on safety many times. And maintaining the existing infrastructure is not glamorous. New roads sound a lot more fun, but I'll tell you, one of my goals, honestly, is to keep Minnesota out of engineering books. When you have a major tragedy, you make it into engineering books as the negative example of what happens when something goes wrong. So we are in dire need of maintaining our roads. We've got like D rating on overall, so we need to spend money on that, and that's no fun. For daycare, we got to be creative in how we deal with that. One idea I have is to find an incentive to get larger corporations to provide on-site daycare. That would be helpful. Work with some of the regulations so it's not as confusing for in-home daycare. They're getting a little frustrated with that and getting out of it, so that needs to be finessed with some input from them. Let's see. Housing, there's not enough of it. There's many things we could do about that. A lot of people are looking for apartment-style housing. When seniors retire, they want to keep up their house and move into town. So they need it, and people starting their careers also need more apartment-style housing, so we need that for everyone.
Thank you. This one you get 3 minutes.
Bonus round.
3 minutes.
Miles?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, what do you believe is the biggest problem in our district, and how do you think you'd solve it, or do you have any plans on how to solve that? And I think we'll start with Dave.
Oh,
here.
okay.
It's very unorthodox.
Would you say, I was thinking you were going to take this one, but
Oh, yeah, which way is
Yeah,
this
it's
supposed to go?
okay, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
Okay.
Okay.
Biggest problem?
So, what's the biggest problem in our district, in your opinion, and how would you solve it, or do you already have plans on how to solve it?
Thank you. Boy, again, you guys are asking some really good questions tonight. I will tell you the one thing I'm hearing most at the doors or at events that I attend is, Dave, doggone it, do something about health care, because they're paying really high premiums. A lot of families are paying more in premiums for health care than they are their house payments or their rent payments. And the deductibles, which you have to meet before the insurance even kicks in. You guys know what deductibles are? That means you got to pay all this ahead of time before your deductibles even kick in, where your health insurance kicks in. That's really high. So I will tell you that I think health care is the #1 concern that we have in our district. Now, there's so many things that come under health care. There is mental health, there's addiction, there's Medicare for seniors, there's aging and long-term care. But I will tell you the thing that I get revved up about, in fact, I'm on a health care committee in St. Paul called the Health Care Reform Committee. What that committee does is we look at policy changes to the health care laws. And this committee dives into what makes a policy better or worse. So we take our time, we dive into this. I brought many bills to the floor to this committee, like, again, why I think it's important for doctors to look at somebody's background when they're going to give you an opioid for the first time. I think that a doctor should say, you know, honestly, you've got a back problem, I understand that, or maybe you cut yourself, you need some injuries, and I'm thinking about giving you a pain medication. Now, what we've learned with opioids, this is pharmaceutical heroin, okay? And I hope kids understand what that is. I want a doctor to be able to say quickly and easily, he's going to look on his database, because everybody in an exam room right now has a computer there. They can quickly pull this up. And I want them to go to what's called the Prescription Monitoring Program, or otherwise it's called the PMP. I want them to look at this quickly to say, honestly, oh, you're not on anything right now, that's good. Because sometimes what's happening is people are faking an injury, they're going to a doctor, and it's called doctor shopping. And I want to make sure that that law gets changed so that doctors have an easier way to get there. Because right now doctors have a clunky system. It's not easy for them to get to it. Doctors want to help. But right now the system is slow and it's not a good software program. I want to improve the program, so I got to bring it to that committee and I want to improve it. That's one small example of a healthcare issue that I think we should change in Minnesota, but it takes a lot of things to make sure that doctors are okay with it. Like her husband Ken, I worked with Ken Flowe a lot with his understanding about opioids, because he's a really good partner. He's doing a good job with that. But others need to make sure they understand my passion for this, because it's important for other families to know the importance that when you go to a doctor, this is why we need to check the PMP. That's one example, but healthcare in general has to be torn apart and looked at as to why is it so expensive. We need to get to the bottom of that for sure.
Thank you.
I have to agree. Healthcare is the biggest thing I am hearing as I go around talking to people. And the concerns are with the high cost of all parts of the high in premiums, that people are concerned about losing the protection of having pre-existing conditions covered. They're really worried about that. High cost of prescription medicines, all of it. And I see it as one of the issues that keep us back from expanding our economy. People aren't free to start a new business when they have to stay with that employer to where they have that safe health care insurance. They can't jump off it and start something new or grow something new they started on the side. Farmers are really hurting these days. They have the normal insecurities of the weather. I really admire farmers. They put up with a lot. But now economic vagaries have gotten a little bit worse these days. We don't know where that's going. So one proposal on the table is to allow buy-in into Minnesota Care. That's a well-established network of providers. It's people who had access to it really love it. So if we allowed additional buy-in to Minnesota Care, we could get farmers paying premiums less than $3,000 to $2,000 a month. That would be nice. That's outrageous. And we could encourage more small businesses to grow, which is a very, very nice thing to be able to do. We have some very entrepreneur-minded people around here, and we want to encourage them. Now, when it comes to what the insurance should cover, I would like to see coverage that meets all the needs that we have. We do have the opioid crisis to deal with, and I think that should be, addiction coverage should be included in a good health care plan, as with mental health issues. And we should make sure people, when they need the help, they get it promptly. Let's see. Oh, there has been a good deal of work done with physicians to educate them. Prescribing practices have changed. For years, my husband has complained about, he does turn away people who show up in the emergency department where he works, trying to get prescriptions. It's always been available to look these things up and turn them away. It could be made easier, but it's not a really big project. Part of this is the attitude towards working towards it. There's been some divisiveness used in discussing these issues. We kind of get into the situation where people label as deserving or undeserving of care. You know, there's some rhetoric going around about, well, why should we cover people who have bad habits, or they show up too often at the emergency department? And at one of Ken's professional meetings I went to, it was described as being very complex. I mean, there's many reasons why people show up too many times, frequently, at the emergency department, and it takes many different approaches to work with that.
You guys are asking some really good questions, by the way.
Well, you were expecting.
Good job. This is great. Better than we've ever seen so far, I gotta tell you. Yes.
Well, there's a shout out to our committee for that.
Good job.
Right here.
Yeah, I mean, seriously about that. Good job.
Hey. Okay, what are some of your most important values?
I think we're starting with Anita.
Me?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I already mentioned the safety issue with with engineers. Fairness. I like to see people treated fairly. People who feel included in the community and supported in their needs will be more productive. And it's not talk; it's reality. We have to meet the needs of healthcare, or you can't, be productive in school or at work. Productive in, we need transportation needs. I mean, it's really complicated. Like the transportation thing alone. I came head to head with that this summer. I injured my foot. I needed to get around. And there's no Uber here, which is fairly expensive anyway. There's a van system, but you have to, reserve it like an hour before you need to get where you're going, and then you have to wait a long time afterwards. Transportation is such an issue to keeping people back from getting forward. If you, find a job but you don't have transportation, you're up a creek. So how do we value people that need transportation to get to their first job, or their second job, or the third job? We require jobs of people, but that's one way I want to show caring, is to make sure people can have what they need to do what they need. Opportunity. I've had many nice opportunities in my life, and I don't want anybody to look at me and say, look, she's self-made. Look at all that work she did, all on her own. She got all these degrees. No, I had help, and it was before I was born. My father was a beneficiary of the GI Bill. It helped him go to college. It helped him to get a good job, and he could afford it to send his kids to school. So, in all fairness, when I turn around and look at other people, I want them to have the same path I did. I want them to have, you guys to have educational opportunities that don't make you go broke. I want you to get the scholarships you need, low interest loans. I don't want you to be crippled in debt when you're done, because I wasn't. My father was able to help me more than he would have had he not had the GI Bill. So that's about opportunity that it's generational. It comes down the line.
Well, I can't rattle it off.
I won't. I know, I'm just an idealist. I want everybody to walk down the street and be seen as a potential lawyer or pharmacist, or seen for their value even if they don't have a high-level job. I value farmers, and I value the people that grow my food and clean up after me when I go to a restaurant.
As a restaurant owner, I'm glad you said that. Good job. Thank you.
Yes, I do appreciate it.
I know you do. I know you do. My staff. What are my values? I would say that the one thing that I will tell you, I want to leave this world a little better than when I came into it. I'm a huge community volunteer guy. I think that my helping put iPads in a classroom in Wilmer, or helping put together the playground at Robbins Island, to putting together the Winterfest up in Spicer for many years, to creating a foundation after my son's name, who passed away of addiction. I want to make sure that I leave a mark in this world. And to do that, you have to make sure that you have values that are core deep. I am, like Anita, I am very fortunate that I was born into a middle-class family. My dad worked really hard, and our mom was able to stay home to raise 5 kids. I'm the oldest of 5 kids. And to do that is not as simple as it was 50 years ago when I was born. So my values are, I believe deeply in my faith. And faith drives my decisions with right and wrong. And I think a lot of us get to make decisions every day. We have choices every day. And the choices we make are what makes the fabric of who we are. And so for me, as an employer now, I'm going to fast forward this thing, my employees look at me every day to make sure that I provide them a good business, good food, a clean hotel, so that they can come to work every day and know that they're going to get a paycheck, that their paycheck isn't going to bounce at the check at the bank, that I can provide them good leadership to make sure they're trained right, that I also look at them with sincerity and say, you know, good morning, Sally, or good evening, Charlie, how are you today? And I really mean it, from my dishwashers to my cooks to my housekeepers to my front desk at the hotel. So my fabric of my being has always been that I am so grateful for the mom and dad that I have, for the 3 children that I was able to bring to this world. And when I leave this world, I want to make it better. And to do that, I know that it's going to be a constant decision-making process, because I want to make sure that I don't make a mistake. And I might, and that scares me, because I'm human. And we might screw up. I might get a ticket. I might do something that, like, what was I doing? So we're human. And in politics, we have to be honest with that. I also I don't like working with people in St. Paul that are dishonest, and that I feel like lobbyists, for example, are trying to lean me one way and not the other because they're not telling me the whole truth about something. I won't work with those people. So you get one chance with me, but it's a good chance, because I trust you before you let me down, but I believe that you should have that trust for me, because that's the way I was brought up.
Thank you.
Awesome. So this question is for you, specifically David.
Yep.
David
is fine either way. My mother calls me David, but that's okay.
At the forum last week, the one that the League of Women Voters had held, you said that Minnesota doesn't need more gun laws, but that we should enforce the ones we have already. Could you elaborate?
Sure. And I know it's an important question to a lot of people right now is, you know, Minnesota, as I've kind of done a little bit of homework, and I think I might have mentioned at the meeting, I don't sit on the committee that's called the Public Safety Committee. So I'm a little bit fuzzy on maybe the issues of how deep do our gun laws go in Minnesota. I haven't dove in deep. I focus a lot on healthcare, energy, transportation, like I mentioned before. But gun laws are important in Minnesota because I think that anybody who carries a gun, like again, a concealed weapon or something like that, has to have a permit. I happen to have a permit. I hardly ever carry a gun, but I have it if I need it. I believe that Minnesota has more gun laws than most states, especially in the Midwest, and I think that Minnesotans love their guns. Minnesotans love to hunt and take target practice, and I think for the most part, Minnesotans are good stewards of managing their guns. Now, around the country, we have some issues with guns. What I have learned in the last couple of years that I've been in office is that what are we missing? What are the issues that are going to help us make our community safer? And if it's who carries a gun, who doesn't carry a gun? Is it a registry? Everybody should have a sign up. I want to know whatever it is, if it can honestly save people's lives, I'm listening. I haven't heard or seen anything yet that does that. So if I hear that and see that as a legislator, as your representative right now, if I get a chance to go back, I'm going to look at that. Because honestly, if there's something that I know will save lives, I'm all in. But I don't know that I've seen anything yet that came across my desk or our committee that I get to look at that has shown me, that's what we're missing. I haven't seen it yet. There's some guns that are illegal. You cannot own and use an assault weapon. That's been against the law for many years. Thank goodness the earlier founders or the earlier people said, we don't need any use for this. The military needs it, and I'm supportive of that. But right now, I don't think we need more gun laws. I want to make sure that what we have is being enforced. So I want to make sure that what we do makes sense. I want to learn more about this issue. But right now, I just, again, as I've listened to a lot of people in Candioi County, Dave, don't mess with my guns because I'm taking care of it properly. I do not mess around because this is a dangerous thing. But they respect it. That's the one thing I think I can tell you I learned the most when I went through my gun training to have my conceal and carry. You better be dang careful. When you are going to possibly fire this weapon at somebody, you better know the consequences when you do this. That was my aha moment when I went through that class. And that helped me understand that that's what I needed to hear. I hope that cleared it up a little bit, Ashley.
Yeah, it did. Thank you so much.
Can I ask a quick follow-up question on that? It's just a yes or no. So last year, Elliot and I met with you. I think it was in the spring sometime. And at that time, you said that you have not accepted any campaign money from the NRA. Would
Correct.
That still be true?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Awesome.
Yep.
Okay, and this one's for Anita.
Okay.
At the forum last week, the same one, you spoke about the problem of overcrowding in prisons, but we didn't fully understand what you're trying to get at. So could you elaborate on that again?
Yes. Thank you for this opportunity to clear up an answer that wasn't clear. Prisons should not be overcrowded. I mean, overcrowding is going to lead to dangerous working conditions for the guards and other employees, and it's also dangerous for the inmates that we are charged to take care of in a responsible manner. So if it's a matter of funding, we got to find the funding to deal with that. I think some people would find a solution would be to build more prisons. As a long-term goal, I don't want to build more prisons. I want to empty them. Because let's back it up and look at why are people in the prisons in the first place. We have a rather high incarceration rate compared to some other areas in the industrialized world. And so we need to find ways to keep people out of prison. Is it a matter of having treatment programs for people with addiction problems? Are they stealing to fuel their addiction? Well, then let's have the treatment programs and keep them out that way. Is it a matter of more creative ways of reintegrating people into the community so they have if they've offended once, we need to make sure they have the skills and the opportunities to get back into the community so they don't wind up back in prison again. See, how else can we approach it? Education. There are studies that show that if you have quality preschool programs like Head Start and give people good educational opportunities and a reason to excel and see themselves with a bright future, with mentorship and whatever else it takes, then they have something to fill their life that's productive and they stay away from situations that might land them in trouble. So it's not a one-shot deal for keeping people out of prison. It's many things you need to do, both to prevent them getting in, maybe to get them out earlier, more appropriate sentencing patterns, reintegrating people into the community, making sure that sentencing is fair. Sometimes there's unfair bias that might be even unconscious, but you need to deal with that. Make sure that being fair with all that. So yeah, I'm showing you my engineering bias. I like to see the entire picture. I don't like to look at just one little bitty thing. I mean, prisons just aren't a system all by themselves. There's people coming in, there's people going out, and you have to look at the entire system to make sure that it works. Because there's no such thing as a nice prison. Nobody wants to be there. I hear some stories about homeless people offending so they can have a warm place to stay, but that's a whole other issue. Keep trying to deal with homelessness, so that's another question and answer, I guess.
Thank you.
How do you feel about the Planned Parenthood being funded by the government?
Who do you want to shoot it to?
Both of you guys.
Yeah, let's go to Anita first.
Okay. Planned Parenthood provides a lot of necessary services for reproductive health. They do testing and treatment for various illnesses, and they take care of needs for. Actually, I think it winds up being a primary health care provider for some women. So the services they provide are very important. Funding from the government for these types of services, prevention of pregnancy, STDs, all that, I see no problem with that. They are currently, I believe, they do not get funding for abortion services, so that's not really an issue. These services need to be provided one way or another. If for some reason they can no longer get funding from their usual sources, then we have to find another way to provide these services for women. We can't just cut it off. This has happened in some areas of the country, which is going to lead to more unplanned pregnancies, and that's a crisis for families. If you don't have a job to support yourself in dignity, and then you want to be able to plan and space your family so that you can, you know, feed your children the way you want to.
Hey, Anita. Fine. You get it done on time.
Like, can I talk to you later, please?
Yeah, Al.
Thanks. Oh, sorry about that. So, Planned Parenthood, although it has an image of being geared towards women, it's actually very important for everyone. I really don't like the idea of separating women's health apart from other health needs. I'm back to that holistic thing where a good health plan will cover mental health issues and addiction and women's needs too. So, you know, if right now the current situation is that some of these have been separated out and some lower income women find their medical needs are met by Planned Parenthood, those needs have to continue to be met some way or another going forward. And we have the clinics in place, so I think we should continue to use them. They're providing a service, they have their established clientele, and they need to continue to access their medical needs. They do screening for cancer and all kinds of things there that pretty standard and we need. Thank you.
Thank you.
So what are my thoughts of Planned Parenthood? That's the question?
And government funding.
Sure, thank you. This is an easy question for me because this is one of my core beliefs, that I honestly believe that life starts at conception. So I believe that the baby needs a voice. It doesn't mean that I think women don't have a choice and have a say in the matter, but somebody, in my opinion, and this is again going back to my mom and dad, who raised me with this deep religious belief that it's a miracle and God made this happen. And that's really what I think. And I've said that the whole time. So Planned Parenthood has been a scary thing for me because while I do know that they provide a lot of women's health care, I think that's not a problem. I know legally they don't take money for abortions, but I don't believe that they use it and they don't swap accounts around and they don't use it to kind of help other services, so that it's impossible to separate that line, and I don't think that's happening. So I'm not a big fan of Planned Parenthood because I don't think that we need them like we used to, because again, the Affordable Care Act gives everybody the access to health care for reproductive purposes, for STDs, and I really think that we have a federally qualified health center right here in Wilmer. FQHC is what it's called. It's on the west end of town, and they take care of these kind of things for people who don't have the money to do it. Again, when I hear of an abortion, I get really sad because I think that that's a baby that could have been here, and that's how I feel. Won't ever change that. So I get concerned that Planned Parenthood is a organization that has been funded by the government far further and far more than I think they should have, because I really honestly believe one thing that they do is they provide the abortion services, which is something that I just will never get behind. So for me personally, not a big fan. I don't think the government should support it. I hope I was clear on the answer. Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, and then the next question, Miles. We can bring this back to 2 minutes, I think.
Yeah, we've got something like 25 questions, so
yeah,
we're gonna need to shorten these up a little bit.
1 or 2 minutes, though, we need probably.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
because otherwise we're never.
yeah.
How about you pick your best question? So if you have a question, you have to pick one.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, that
That way
should
we
short
don't have
things
23
down.
questions.
Yeah. Anywho, you both have similar views on voting rights for felons, but we were wondering if you believe that people in prison should be given the right to vote. And if you want to, you can elaborate, but if you just want to say yes or no, I think that's fine for now. So let's start with you, Dave.
Perfect. No. And I'll tell you, if you're in prison, you're still a felon and you don't have rights. Right? That's my opinion. We shouldn't let them vote. But if you're on probation, like I mentioned at the other forum, I think that you're out in the society, you're trying to get a job, you want to vote, that's fine, that's different. But if you're in prison, you should not be allowed to vote.
Awesome.
Short and sweet.
Short and sweet.
Under 30 seconds. Record time.
Okay. And again, no, I don't think people that are in prison should be allowed to vote, but I definitely want them to be reintegrated into society and feel like their voices are heard once they've done their time and they're, met the requirements to vote again. So that's an important part of feeling like they belong.
Thank you.
Are we going to do just 1 minute per question for people?
What time are we at right now? We are at 6:54.
That'll be fine, because then that's like 50.
So are we still doing the 1 question per person and 1 minute per question?
Yes.
Okay, be a leader now, Mr. President. Here we go.
At the end of the fiscal year of 2017, Minnesota had a large budget surplus. If you were the governor, what would you spend this budget surplus on?
Ooh.
Dave, I'll defer this to you first.
I don't know that I want to spend it.
Okay.
I mean, the Minnesota brings in about $52 billion in taxes in a 2-year period. We call it a biennium. We take in a lot of taxes. Just because we have a surplus doesn't mean we spend it.
Mm-hmm.
Boom.
Okay. Quick and simple.
Okay. Shorter and shorter. I like it.
Alright, this is perfect.
Alright, so Anita, go ahead. You have the answer.
Okay,
opportunity
you're
to
asking
answer
for
the same
my wish
question.
list. I don't know the technicalities of spending this money the way I want to, but when I hear about unmet needs, well, we start going through the unmet needs. We start repairing the roads that are dangerous. I don't want to see bridges falling down. We have flipped the spending pattern for higher education. It used to be 60-40, 60% was paid by the state, 40% by the student, and now it's the other way around. That's one reason we have so much debt when people are finished. Funding other unmet needs. Talked about daycare and housing. There are so many ways to spend money. No problem. I can spend money to help people.
Okay.
Go.
Miles, are you ready to go next?
Yeah.
Okay, I call them after mine.
Okay. So, my question is going to take longer to ask than the answer is probably going to be, but it's about political parties, and it's kind of a confusing question, but I'll give 2 examples to make it clear what I mean. You don't have to answer the 2 examples directly, but yeah. Anyway, how important are political parties to the way you vote? For instance, in the event that the political party you belong to votes in opposition to what you believe in, or maybe what the people you represent believe in, what do you do? Or do you consider yourself a Republican or a Democrat or a representative of the people first? And I think we'll go with Anita first.
Parties are quite useful. As you could see at the national level, that for someone to run, they need to declare themselves to be a member of a party so that they can have access to all the support and database that are needed, even though it doesn't quite fit. We've had some independents do that recently. And for the most part, I believe in my party's platform, but there's going to be situations where that doesn't fit. It seems to come up somewhat often when dealing with matters of agriculture. There's a lot of people, a lot of legislators from the cities that don't quite see what we need out here this way. And I will always vote my conscience. And I know that sometimes that means that it won't be popular. I might not be reelected. And there's a family history of that too. My great-grandfather was sheriff of Person County in North Carolina. He'd been there for a long time. And he had to protect a young man from being lynched. He made the national news. He saved the man's life, but he wasn't reelected. But he did what was right. So he is my hero, and that is the way I will be.
Thank you. And Dave?
2 parties. I love being a Republican. I stand for a lot of what they believe in, but I don't always agree. But I always go back to the 3 C's. When I make a vote, that is what comes to mind for me. So the 3 C's are my conscience, and as I mentioned before, how I feel about certain things about pro-life and things that are very core to me, I will never change. Number 2 is my community. What does my community think about this vote? Well, how are they going to react to this? So if I get past my conscious decision, and I'm okay either way, then what is my community going to say? If my community is like, it doesn't matter either way on this vote, then I'll go to my caucus, which also means my party. So what is their platform? What do they care? And there's a lot of votes, I will tell you, that the Republicans like, well, whatever, just vote however you want to vote. They don't care. Nobody ever tells me how to vote in St. Paul. And the Speaker of the House will tell me that many times. He tells us all this. I won't tell you how to vote, but there are some important votes that I want to know. If you can't support it, will you just give me a heads up? So he or she is not surprised. That is the one thing that I like about our party and what we talk about, how we deal things, because they all know that you're our boss in Candido County. I do not report to the Speaker. I report to the voters in Candido County. So for me, that's how I make my decisions. And I think the parties are important because it does give you that underlying tone of, generally we believe in less taxes. Generally we believe in more conservatism. Generally we believe in no more laws. We have a lot of them already on the books. Let's just manage the ones we have, generally. But we certainly do spend money. We certainly do put more laws on the books. But I think we try to do this with some more constraint. So hopefully that got to you there. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, and then next question is for me. This is just for you, Dave. You talked about being a businessman and knowing a lot about things about the business. That's like your strength. Well, now sexual harassment and sexual misconduct in the workplace is such a hot topic, and some might say a problem that needs to be dealt with. So the question is, How do you think bosses should deal with employees when they report sexual harassment or misconduct?
Great question. Like our company, we recently put out an update in our handbook so that we are very clear to every single one of my employees. If anybody ever comes to me and says, Dave, I feel uncomfortable, I was touched inappropriately, I heard these jokes and they're horrific, I don't like it, I'm not comfortable. We have a clear policy. I follow up on it immediately, either me or my wife Mary, who's also the co-owner, and we make sure that every single employee that works for us is protected and in a safe environment. Boys or girls, men or women, it doesn't matter. I don't like the teasing that goes on sometimes in a business. I don't like how it's thought to be funny and it is completely horrible. I don't like that. So we have a very clear policy in my company. You follow our rules. If you get out of line, you're going to be reprimanded. Depends on the severity of it. If it's slight and you told a joke and it wasn't appropriate, here's your warning. You do it again, there's the door. But we want to make sure that everybody who works for Dave Baker and Mary Baker feels safe and secure in whatever that is. And I actually will do the same thing too. If I see it outside of my work, I'll step in. I'm a guy. I like to make sure that people feel safe. It bothers me so much when I see a kid bullying another kid. That hurts me. So I'll step into that I can. But when it comes to the business, Osley, that's what I'm going to do because that's a part of our policy that we've upgraded and upchanged because of the Me Too movement. It's an important thing that we have to pay attention to. And I think it's a really good thing that they've done.
Thank you so much. Who's next?
I was just wondering on some of your ideas about moving forward about our environmental impact. So, whoever wants to start.
Environmental impact of
just like us in general, as like the community, about our waste, our usage, and going forward.
That's a really good question, and I gotta admit, I kind of grew up hearing about these issues. My father was a landscape architect, and he would be developing property, commercial property or subdivisions, and there was always this tension between development and preservation. And he was always talking about it, well, we can't put something there because it's a wetlands, or he would make a comment about somebody who built something in the wrong place and that's going to flood. That was a floodplain. And sure enough, it's in a floodplain and it makes national news when it gets flooding. So there's this tension between development, which we need for the economy, and preservation of the waterways, both rivers and underground aquifers and forests. Around here, what plays out is there's a tension sometimes between the development that we call farming, and there's sometimes it comes up that farmers feel like we've been a little bit heavy-handed in some of the regulations because they weren't consulted. The buffer strip issue, they kind of got upset about that. It was something that should have been consulted with them, with the more input. How to deal with that to get the right balance between preservation and usage. Moving forward, we need to have more conversations between the farmers and the experts on preservation of the ecology, and just get it together. That was a disaster. It raised a lot of bad feelings, and it's just a dynamic that is not cut and dried. We have to have both.
Thank you.
Well, I really care about the environment, and that's another great question. But I think, as we've kind of heard tonight, I want to find the right balance with this. Again, farmers is a good example. I think farmers are one of the best stewards of our land. They don't want to waste a drop of water when they pump it out of the ground for their wells. They don't want to waste a single drop of chemicals to make sure that the crops are healthy and are not full of weeds. It costs them money. So I really believe that our farmers are awesome when it comes to that. I want clean water and I want clean air. Minnesota has 12,000 plus lakes in it, and I care a lot about it. That's one of the reasons why our taxes are higher than most states, is because we spend a lot of time on environmental issues. The Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, I think, is an agency that is overreaching. As kind of Anita said, there's some things that they have done and others have done overreach a little bit too much. I think it's the role of the legislature to make sure that they're not reaching too far. because there's other groups that are making sure that they don't reach enough. And so we have the federal EPA, Environmental Protection Agency. Minnesota has the Pollution Control Agency. They sometimes, the Minnesota rules are on top of the EPA rules. So it's making it very challenging for development, for land use questions. Again, when the ethanol plant out here in Atwater wanted to expand a couple years ago, they just are kind of finishing it up now. It's going to provide 60 more jobs. They had to go through such horrible permitting processes because they were going to create some new bins and there was a little bit more dust. I thought the MPCA went too far and made it too hard for them, and it cost them far too much more money, and it didn't do any good at the end of the day. So, good question, though. Thank you.
Thank you.
Grace, you're up.
So this one's for Anita. What is your stance when it comes to abortion? Are you pro-life or pro-choice?
Everybody is pro-life. Nobody wants to see somebody feel the need to have an abortion. I am so grateful that my son had adequate health care given to him, opportunities to his birth mother, and then health care for him when he was born prematurely so that he could become my son. And that, going forward, is what I want to lay out. I want to, first of all, prevent crisis pregnancies in the first place by having adequate access to birth control. And then if somebody finds themselves in a crisis pregnancy, I want them to have the options that they need to deal with it. Sometimes a crisis pregnancy is because of medical issues. And I want the woman and her family to have the freedom to discuss their medical needs with their physicians and do what's best in that particular situation. There's so many different singular situations. If it's a crisis pregnancy because of financial need, well, that's wrong. We haven't done our job. We have not made it possible for somebody to consider having one more child, or more if it's twins or more. But we need to roll out the welcome mat and make sure they feel comfortable with their level of health care for the mother while she's pregnant, for the child after he or she's born. So they're looking at educational opportunities, and if they happen to know that this child, before it's born, they happen to know has special needs, we have to make sure that we have everything that child needs for their life. Because parents, the child is going to outlive the parents, and so make sure we have, group home or whatever the child needs if it's a special needs pregnancy.
Thank you.
And for Dave, what is your stance on birth control?
I think birth control is part of our healthcare system. I think family planning is best done when it's done with a couple or a married couple, of course. So to have that part of our healthcare system is not a problem for me. But again, as I mentioned earlier, obviously I'm pro-life and I'm proud of that. So I think that using good choices, and if that means you're using birth control, I'm okay with that. That's not a problem at all. So it's preventing it. And again, some people are ready for it when they're ready, but some people are not. So if you're making good choices, I think birth control is part of our healthcare system, and it should be part of this decision that people make.
Thank you. All right, my question is for both of you, and it's important that you guys are both serving in the Twin Cities and, of course, serving our community here in Candiota County. And so if you were elected to representative, how would you divide your work time between the Capitol and here in our community? We'll start with Anita or Dave.
Well, Dave answered, so it's supposed to be Dave. It should be so.
The reason I'm saying this is such a great question, Lydia, is nobody ever cares about what we do on a balance of life. So thanks for asking the question. Because it's one of the hardest things that we have to decide, Anita or I, is how much are we willing to leave our families to go do this job on your behalf. So when I've been in St. Paul now for 4 years, I work like a mad dog when I live down there. So when I drive down at 5 o'clock in the morning on Monday mornings, or if I go down Sunday night if I have an early meeting Monday morning, we're there all week long, and I come home on the weekend so I can work at my restaurant or check on my hotel, right? And of course I want to see my family and mow my grass and all those kind of good things. What you will find in St. Paul, and if Anita gets to serve, she will find that during session, when we start January 4th and we're done about the 20th or so of May, it is an all-out sprint. Every week is full of 80, 90 hours a week in St. Paul. We come home sometimes, there's a lot of meetings to go to, school board meetings, maybe city council members, meetings like this. So we meet usually Saturday mornings. We actually go on the radio, we talk about what's going on in St. Paul. So it's all out when we're in session. Now, right now we're not in session. So I was done on end of May. I've been home this whole summer. Again, meeting with people, getting ready for an election, making sure people know that I still want to run for office. So the balance is, I'm sorry, I wasn't watching that. The balance is you got to watch it or you will burn out, and your family will say, okay, dear, that's enough, you're coming home. And when my wife tells me it's time to come home, I'm coming home. So you better watch that balance.
Well, this is definitely something I investigated before I decided to run. And as Dave said, you spend most of the week in St. Paul and then you come back here and you're still going full on to stay in contact with people. People want to know what's going on, and it's not just the radio show. You're going around to various community groups as much as you can on the weekends. It's quite an amazing thing. It's paid like a part-time job, and it's really a full-time job, more and more, double-time job. There's so much to learn. When I first started, I wanted to be an expert at everything. Well, you can't master everything and be an expert, but I'm looking forward to learning as much as I can. I enjoy going to different groups, meetings, farmers and teachers and unions and all these different groups, and learning what I can and what their concerns are and trying to fit them all together so that we don't get too focused on any one thing. So that's my joy, is learning all the different moving parts and fitting them together, and it never ends. Needs change, you have to keep learning and meet more people. And okay, I think I made it pretty clear with my resume, I like to learn things, so that part's fun.
Thank you, Anita. Grace, do you ask both your questions or do you have another one?
No.
Okay, you're good?
I think so. Everyone said it.
Alright, Elliot?
Oh, okay. Minnesota is one of the few states in the United States that is on track with the Paris Climate Accord, and as far as reducing carbon emissions. If you were elected, what would you do to help reduce carbon emissions, or would you at all? Anita, I think you can go first.
Okay, you kind of hit on one of the reasons I'm running. Is I respect the science that is dealing with global warming and efforts to deal with that, and I want to see that plans are made using that good data to continue to reduce our carbon footprint. In Minnesota, we are blessed to have cloud-free skies and high winds, so solar energy and more wind energy can be used in this area. So just continue those efforts and to use that. Is that enough?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay.
So what would I do? Yeah, what would I do to kind of help that footprint? So I sat on the utilities board here in Wilmer for about 7 years. I served as the president of the Wilmer Municipal Utilities Commission. I learned a lot about how our coal plant works downtown Wilmer. I also know that technology right now is really amazing, and you can put carbon reduction systems in place. And that, what I learned, was a good way for our community to start doing what they can to enhance our output for energy, and it's cleaner energy. Now, coal is not wind. Coal is going to create some issues. But what I will tell you is that, again, Minnesota on its own isn't going to be able to do much if we did everything perfect. The wind blows, North Dakota makes it dirty. Wisconsin makes it dirty. Doesn't matter what we do unless the whole globe gets behind something. Now, I'm a guy who, again, I want affordable energy. And coal is part of that. And we also can't turn on a light switch if we all are just using solar or wind. It won't come on if there's no wind. That's part of the other problem. We have to have base load power. So we've got to have that balance. And right now, to see that we are going to have in Minnesota about a 40% renewable balance and a portfolio in the state, that's amazing. Minnesota is far and away ahead of the curve. Xcel Energy is a company that I work with a lot and seeing what they're doing to expand this. So again, I'm all for clean power, but we have to do it as a country and as a globe before we can actually make a difference in our footprint.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, Grace, you have one more question.
Yes. Do you believe there should be more restrictions on purchasing guns and gun laws?
We'll start with Dave.
No. I don't.
No.
I think our gun laws right now are good. That's what I kind of said before, and I think it's good. I mean, but am I willing to listen to some new ideas? Absolutely. But today, right now, if nothing else comes across my desk that makes sense, I think right now our laws are good.
Hey, I'm an engineer, and nothing is ever perfect. So there's always something that can be done to make a situation or a product a little bit better. I definitely respect our recreation opportunities that we have, hunting and target practice. That is something that my son enjoyed. He was introduced to target practice in Boy Scouts. So man, we had to go out and we had to get the gun, and we had to belong to a place where he could go target shooting because we couldn't do it in our neighborhood. He had a lot of fun with that. No way do I want to get in the way of that. But there are some reasonable suggestions about expanded background checks that would make us a little bit safer, and keeping people who are known dangerous to, you know, kind of, what do you call it, restriction or restraining order to keep guns out of people who are being a threat at the moment to themselves or to a loved one. And situations that are known, we need to deal with and keep people safe. So yes, I mean, these things, these kind of changes will not affect our daily usage of self-protection or hunting or target practice. So definitely I support some relatively small changes.
Thank you.
All right, Agretta's going to ask our last question, which I think is quickly becoming one of our favorites at these candidate forums.
Yeah, meaning we will not do a closing statement.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
bummer.
I don't get to repeat myself?
All right.
So, in order to leave on a good note, what is something you find admirable
Yeah, there you go.
about your opponent?
That's a great question. I think it's my turn to start. And again, I consider Anita a friend. We serve in the Rotary together. We work at Rockin' Robins, and we work hard to make sure that everybody can enjoy the free concerts. Anita's a smart person. She is really college smart. She understands issues way better than I probably ever would. I believe what I bring to the table, though, is a lot of common sense and communication skills, and I can articulate a point really well when I'm trying to convince somebody to hear my point of view. She's a really nice lady, and I think anybody that wants to run for office has my respect, has my complete appreciation, and again, win or lose, I will still be her friend. And I think at the end of the day, we're going to sit in Rotary together, we're going to be able to talk about anything, so I think she's just a really nice person.
Thank you.
Well, I admire Dave's success in business. He is a shining example of what educational opportunities do. I know that you haven't had you haven't gone as far in school as I have, but he is such a successful businessman. He knows what he's doing, and when
I have you fooled, don't I? No,
and he's a good poker player.
Oh, maybe. Sorry, yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
So that is he's a very valuable member of our community and business leader. And another thing I really admire is his advocacy and the addiction issues. That is something I would clearly continue, and I would go to him for advice in continuing that work, because he knows so much about it and has And what I truly wish is that nobody knows as much personally as he does.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. That's not exactly a happy note. I'm sorry.
Okay.